Danjuma is underprivileged. He's physically challenged. He cannot help himself. And I wrote that there was no response. After a long time, I had to summon the courage myself, feeding him at the dustbin, and now decided to take him to the hospital to treat him. I took him to Faith Mediplex, where he received medical attention, and he became okay. When he was discharged from the hospital, I notified the ministry.
Although there has been reactions from different quarters to the death of Danjuma, the claim by the former Commissioner for Women Affairs, Mrs. Florence Igbeneghu, that she was responsible for the upkeep of Danjuma after picking him up from the dustbin seems not to go down well with officials of Edo State Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development. While accusing Mrs. Florence Igbeneghu of trying to gain cheap popularity as regards the case of late Danjuma, the Edo State Commissioner for Women Affairs and Social Development, Mrs. Blessing Megida, said based on the information at her disposal, Danjuma was picked from the dustbin by members of a non-governmental organization who took the boy to the hospital, and not Florence Igbeneghu, who claimed to have done so.
I was so surprised yesterday in my office when someone walked into my office and explained that he was the one who took Danjuma to the hospital, treated him, and did all he could for him before Florence Igbeneghu came into the picture.
Who brought Danjuma to this ministry before he was in your custody for 1 month? Was it Mrs. Igbeneghu? Was it the person who heard his voice on your phone?
Mrs. Igbeneghu brought Danjuma and dumped him. She dumped Danjuma here and left. So when I came back from my meeting, I met him there. I decided to make arrangement for him to be catered for. I don't want someone to be taking glory of what she never did. That's not true. Somebody else did that. And when the ministry was informed, we took it from where the person stopped. She was claiming what she did not do.
When contacted, the man who claimed he was responsible for Danjuma's case, Mr. Onome Otueroro, said he picked up the boy from the dustbin and took him to the hospital, stressing that Mrs. Florence Igbeneghu only came into the picture when the boy was already in the hospital and offered to help.
Curtis gave me 3,000 naira to charter a taxi. So we now took the boy to Faith, since Faith is closer. And when we got to Faith, we checked the boy in, and we now decided that somebody should stay and take care of the boy.
After the fact that you chartered a vehicle to pick up the boy from the dustbin, what else did you do? Did you pay for the medical bills?
The medical bill was to be handled by Chief Patrick Holo. But she, at the onset of the whole thing, she went about telling people that she is the one taking. So we now backed out. Since you're telling the whole world, then you take over what you want. Maybe I felt she now saw that it wasn't as easy as she thought. That's why she couldn't go ahead with it.
Logically, sir, will it not be right to conclude that Mrs. Igbeneghu took care of that boy from your own story?
Yeah, she couldn't take care of the boy, because if she could, the boy should still be alive today. My grievance here is that Mrs. Igbeneghu would have allowed us to do our work. Why the self-publicity?
In a swift reaction, however, the former Commissioner for Women Affairs, Mrs. Florence Igbeneghu, who displayed documents of payment of hospital bills for the late Danjuma and a letter she wrote to the Ministry of Women Affairs before taking Danjuma to the hospital, said the honorable thing expected from the Commissioner is to apologize for her ministry's negligence instead of pointing accusing fingers.
I have a video recording of how Danjuma was taken from the pit. How I personally, with my own hands, cleaned Danjuma up with water and soap before Danjuma was taken into the car. I got to Faith Mediplex. They accepted him from me, and I paid the money for the card registration. I paid money to deposit for his admission, and I paid money for every other thing I needed to pay money for. I'm so surprised that at this stage, they are still coming in to play a drama out of the death of somebody, and the commissioner is corroborating them, which means there have been a game plan from the beginning with these people. I don't like people wanting to get cheap publicity over a very serious issue. It's high time we learn to admit our faults and apologize for whatever we have done wrong. You cannot be killed about it. There could be errors, admit it, and let go.
The death of Danjuma, who was dumped in dustbin by relatives, has been a subject of discourse amongst concerned citizens. Best Mbiere reporting.